It is 12:01, so we are going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We do have some new faces within our Zoom room, so we are going to do brief introductions just as a reacquaintance. I'll start. My name is Nichelle. I am the chair of this lovely commission. It is an honor to do this work every month. I was just sharing when we jumped on this call that I get so emotional every time I jump on this call because of the phenomenal leaders that are here. So thank you all for being here. We're excited for visitors. We're excited for everyone who's tuning in and watching this virtually. Thank you for tuning in to our meetings. So I'm going to pass to Liz and then Jill.
Okay. I'm Liz Feidel. I've been on the commission for a while now, and I'm the AFL-CIO Community Services Liaison with United Way of Monroe County. Glad to be here.
I'm Jill Ferguson, and I'm coming up, I think, on 2 years with the commission, and I work with Richland Bean Blossom School District, so RBB, Edgewood Schools, as a family engagement coordinator, and I have 2 daughters that are 10 and 13.
Lovely,
yeah,
Jill.
I had to think about that.
We'll go Jessica and then Nicole.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Nicole, and hi, Mim. I'm Jessica McClellan. I've been on the commission for a couple of years, and I'm also the county treasurer. I have a daughter who is almost 18 and a son who is 16, and they go to Bloomington North. My daughter's going to start college next year, so yeah.
Wow.
I've got a lot going on with the older kids.
Wow.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nicole. I am the Bloomington Commission on the Status of Women liaison to your lovely commission. I am a PhD student at IU, and I have 3 stepkids, and they all go to Edgewood. So it's
lovely.
Yeah.
We'll go Mim and then Trent and then Rima. And Rima, I know you just joined us, but we're just doing a brief introduction. So Mim, then Trent, then Rima.
So my name is Mim Northcutt Bomert, and I'm an associate professor of criminal justice at IU. I'm in my office for the 2nd day. So we were talking, it felt like I walked into a time capsule where the only thing to drink is Coca-Cola Zero Orange Vanilla. So it feels like a bad movie where you open it up and you're not sure if you should, yeah. And there's also a dish of chocolates in someone else's office that I think I'm gonna try. But that's who I am.
What building are you in? What building
I'm
are
in
you?
Sycamore Hall.
Oh yeah, I used to be there for 9 years when I was in the religious studies department.
Oh yeah, were you like 2nd floor or 4th floor?
Yeah, 2nd floor. Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'm on 3rd floor, so I'll be checking out 2nd floor's candy soon.
Yeah.
We'll go Trent and then Rima.
My name is Trent Deckard. I have been on this commission as your liaison from the Monroe County Council for about 2 years almost now. It's hard to believe. And my day job, I'm a communication lecturer over at the Kelly School, where I work with mostly freshman, sophomore students, and I enjoy being on this commission.
Perfect. And then we'll go Rima.
Hey everyone, so I'm Rima. I've been visiting, I think, for a couple times, checking out, love the work that y'all do here at Women's Commission. I live in Bloomington. I was working in private practice, just transitioned and doing more consulting now. Everything's kind of from home right now, so I'm kind of making it what I need it to be, and then I'll start adjunct teaching beginning of next year. I'm also a doctoral student studying counselor education and supervision, so that's me.
Love it. And then last but certainly not least, Michelle.
Hey, are we just doing introductions?
Yeah.
Okay, apologize. I had trouble finding the link this morning. But the good news is I found it on the commission page, which is a perfect place for it to be so the public can access. So good morning, everyone, or I guess it's officially afternoon. My name is Michelle Bartley Taylor, and in addition to serving as a commissioner here on this council, I work at Indiana University for the Center of Excellence for Women and Technology as a senior associate director, where I oversee some stuff there. So good to have you join us, and happy holidays. Here's all hoping that things start calming down very soon.
Yeah, we're going to get a chance to talk about that here. So actually, we're going to take up, we're going to review to approve the agenda. I have one small addition that I would like to make. Under new business, there's a bullet point that says commissioner reappointment. I would like to add under there a discussion about our county council liaison. I know, Trent, you mentioned before that you would like to open up the opportunity for the county council to continue building relationships with us. So perhaps having a new liaison assigned to us. So I want to make sure that we lend some attention to that in today's conversation. So I'm asking that we add that to new business. So let's, commissioners, go ahead and review the agenda. If there are any additions that need to be made or things that we need to correct, let's do that. And then I'll take a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, sorry guys, I'm trying to do notes and facilitate today, so be a little graceful. So Liz motion, Michelle second. All in favor of approving the agenda as amended, signify by aye or a wave. I need to see it.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, it is approved. All right, so then let's go ahead and roll into continuing business. Michelle, you're actually up first with Girls Coding Camp updates.
Okay, so I will share some wrap-up stuff that our partner Susie Graham shared earlier today regarding just some final things that we were waiting to complete with respect to Girls Coding Camp. For those of you who might be new, just a quick overview. We did a 5-week coding camp for middle school aged girls, both in Monroe County, but also Richard Bean Blossom. And we also had an additional track for Brown Girls Code. And it was a collaboration run by our commission, but in collaboration with Ivy Tech, the IU Office of Admissions, the IU Center of Excellence for Women in Technology, and did we have Girl Scouts this year?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and Girl Scouts. I didn't forget anyone else, did I, Michelle? I think that's all of us.
You got it, yep.
So we had a great 5 weeks, and some things that were still open as of our last meeting was we were still waiting for swag items to be delivered. Part of that grant money was used to purchase swag for the participants and some of the volunteers for the program. So update from Ivy Tech, who is handling the ordering and delivering of swag, is that all items that were approved to be ordered, including t-shirts, that sort of thing, are in, and that they're in the process of packaging for shipping. So there was a little bit of a delay apparently due to ordering boxes, but they expect shipping date to be Monday the 14th. They will notify parents that the shipments are on, the packages are on the way, so that they can be on the lookout. All participants will also be receiving a certificate of participation in that mailing. And then any leftover Girls Coding Camp items and t-shirts that are going to be used for volunteers, they're going to let me know when that's ready, and I will pick that up and distribute it to the 20 some odd interns that I have that volunteered their time for that camp. Survey was completed and sent out with a few reminders. Some highlights from that. First of all, there were 8 responses from parents, 8 responses from campers, and some important data points to point out. There's a much more complete evaluation summary if anyone is interested. But there was, in terms of the campers, the participants, the girls themselves, there was a 15% increase in interest in coding and comp sci subjects. There was a 26.25% increase in reported knowledge on coding and computer science. 5 out of 7 campers would recommend the camp to a friend. Parents reported that there was a 17% increase in reported interest in coding and computer science, and also a 17% increase in knowledge on those subjects. 6 out of 7 parents, so a little slightly higher, would recommend the camp to other students, so an 87% positivity rating. Parents, lots of really nice, strong comments on the value of us including the Kroger gift cards. Certainly many of the families that we are serving are food insecure, and that was a great benefit to them. And that, you know, in terms of just looking ahead to next year, which we might spend a little bit more time talking about today or at a future meeting, Ivy Tech, in terms of being a collaborative partner, is interested in continuing with us next year. We do not have at this time details on the financial reports and how much exactly was spent and whether or not there's any money left over, but we have been promised that that is forthcoming. As if you're anyone familiar with university knows that sometimes payments through procurement and the financial aid office are a little delayed, so they may know what they think they've asked for, but sometimes that information doesn't come as quickly as we would all like. So at some point we will have an update for you on final numbers.
Michelle, very robust reporting. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments about Girls Coding Camp?
Were you pleased with it, Michelle?
I'm sorry?
Were you pleased with it?
I was, you know, it's, you know, there's always behind the scene logistical things that can improve, but it's not about that. It's really about what is the impact to the students involved. So, you know, I think I got copied on every response that came through. So as I read them, there was a lot of positive comments. And then, you know, we did ask in terms of, was 5 weeks too much, too little? Was 5 days too much, too little? And, you know, often what happens with a survey is you got people who liked every variation. And so, you know, our best guess in terms of what's going to work for everyone is usually best, because you just can't, you know, you ask 10 people for input, you get 10 different answers. So, but yes, overall, I'm very pleased. I think it's I think we may have mentioned this at the last meeting, but there was a nice article in the Herald Times.
Yeah.
So it's good visibility and it's important work. So yes.
Excellent.
The short answer, Liz, is yes.
Me too. I was very excited, especially in the HT coverage. I thought it was grand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody reached out to them. They just covered it somehow, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
That's the best kind of coverage.
Yep, you bet.
That is the best kind of coverage. I am overall very impressed with how this came about, especially knowing that we were planning, or at least having conversations about, an in-person 1 week camp. That is all that we walked into this planning process expecting to do. And then it turns into a 5 week virtual, 5 day a week after school production with $50,000 from Verizon. Like, if you want to talk about dramatic change, this is about as dramatic as I have seen a program kind of turn. And so the fact that, one, we were able to pull it off and to get such positive responses. I mean, some of the emails that we got from family members, even down to the perspective of saying, like, thank you for creating a Brown Girls Who Code opportunity, because that made us feel seen with our children. I mean, just overall positive impact. And another thing, the high school, I'm sorry, not the high school, the district coordinators for RBB actually sent me an email and was like, this was so phenomenal for our students. We now want to think about how do we continue this type of support into high school. So now they're working directly with Ivy Tech to build out this type of structure for their high school students. I mean, this type of impact just doesn't really get any greater, okay?
Yeah.
So I am overall really really happy with how this turned out. I was very thankful when the last day of camp came. Yes, Jessica.
How did the mentors work out? Did they enjoy the experience, and did the kids get much out of their personal mentors?
So I'll speak to the professional mentors. The relationship between the professional mentors and the students was phenomenal. Many of them still talk, like till today. I still get feedback loosely and informally, but they still talk about being engaged. There were a couple of mentors that their students pulled out of camp, so they didn't have as meaningful of an experience, but overall, unanimously, it was very, very, very impactful. And actually, I've heard from one family that had a mentor that was connected to Crane. They actually are doing an additional learning opportunity. So these relationships kept developing. I don't think that all of them are still connected, but for those students and families that want to be connected to their mentors, they absolutely are still doing that. Michelle, you want to talk about
I do. Before Jessica asked, I was actually going to mention the impact to interns as well. So we have, college age students, some of them, most of them undergraduate, some of them graduate. I think we had like 26 of my interns participate in some capacity. And they continue to tell stories about it. I mean, particularly for women, and most of my, 98.9% of my interns are female because of the nature of my center, or our center. The impact to giving back. It is so important to them to give back, but to have a vehicle set up for them to do that makes it easier for them to actually fulfill that need that they have. So they talk very positively about it. They are proud that they feel like they're contributing to the greater good. And many of them talked about, it's so funny, I get so emotional so easy about my interns. But anyway, many of them talk about they wish they had something like this for themselves. And part of what our center does is empowerment. And so there's a reason it's a center of excellence for women in technology, because the culture continues to not be as welcoming as it could. And the work culture, we get them all psyched to go out there, and then, some of it's the same old, right? Sexual harassment in the workplace and all of that is still alive and strong, I'm afraid. And so they feel like there's a big contribution for them to be involved. And they love that it's with young girls. I think middle schoolers are a little less intimidating to them. And, research-based, that's an ideal or optimal time to intervene, because that's when girls start to have more confidence issues and start getting dissuaded through messaging, intentional and often not intentional, to get away from tech. So there you have it.
Well, thank you, Michelle. The interns were such an integral part to the success of this camp. We could not have done it without them. And there's another special young lady that I want to shout out, Elena Kim. She's a high school student. Yeah. I've bragged on her before in this meeting, but here's what I love about Elena's contribution. She came to me and said, hey, I run a coding camp at my high school. I would love to serve with Girls Coding Camp. How can I get involved? So she got connected with Michelle. Michelle gave her the complete rundown of the camp, plugged her into the opportunities. And on day one, after her experience, she sent me an email with a ton of recommendations on this is how we strengthen the experience for students. Let's build out a portfolio for the students. And she set all of this up and was giving feedback to our instructors on how to make this experience so meaningful for the girls. And so when I got through the entire experience and I finally had a chance to look at the portfolios and the things that students were doing, I can't imagine having a camp and not having that portfolio component. And that all came from Elena. So we could not have done this without mentors and interns and people who were not a part of the commission just jumping in and saying, this is what we can bring to the table. So overall, extremely happy This girls coding camp. I will go ahead and put it out there. We are heading into 2020. We do need to start the planning again of this camp.
I need a longer break.
Yeah, we'll go on break. And I think a safe timeline for us to start having critical conversations about this would be February. I can let us ease in January, but in February, we have to start having these conversations because grant cycles are going to be coming up. So we need to figure out if we want to pursue funding again or if we want to entirely do in kind. We need to talk about who our strategic partners are going to be. Who did we not include at the table that should be at the table? And then if all the partners that currently exist will remain at the table. I was very pleased to hear from Ivy Tech that their faculty are still committed to executing the curriculum. We love that partnership with the community college. And so we want to think about keeping them on board. One of the biggest challenges we had was not with the Ivy Tech faculty. It was with some of the administrative leaderships over their departments, just being transparent about the process and like what was going on. And then also about the fiscal matters and then just timeliness. But I think those things, now that we have done it virtually, we know what's ahead of us. We have shared deliverables. I think we can absolutely reduce some of the confusion and miscommunication going into that process this year. So we'll need to have a conversation probably in January, take up a vote about which partners will remain on the project and which partners we want to bring to the project so that in February, we can get all of our strategic partners together and start planning. We'll probably also need to take up a vote in January about whether or not we decide to go back to a summer camp model or if we continue modeling this after school initiative. Do we just want to do 1 week or do we want to stick it out and do 5 weeks? Are we going to do 5 days of instruction? Or are we going to do 1 or 2 days of instruction? So lots of things that we'll need to really like have time to sit down, process through the pros and cons and make some critical decisions so that we can get all of this stuff taken care of as best as possible. So that is what is to come in January. Thank you, Michelle, for such a good update about the program. And thank you all for the endless amount of support and encouragement that you have put into such a wonderful opportunity. And keep in mind, these girls may end up being our commission interns down the road, or they may become commissioners and they'll remember they had this experience. So thank you guys. Any other questions about old or continuing business before we roll to new business? Okay. All right, new business. We need to confirm our 2021 meeting schedule. Are we going to stick with Fridays at noon? Do we want to change to a time that we think may be more accessible to more people in the community? What are your thoughts about our 2021 meeting schedule?
So who may be getting feedback on when we have our meetings besides us? Are we hearing from people either through the commissioner or county council office, or Michelle is the chair, or is anybody where's the feedback on somebody saying, well, I can't make it because it's a bad time? Is anybody saying that, or what do we have?
So as of late, I have not had anyone reach out and say that, but I do know that when we initially were looking for commissioners before we filled with Laura and Jill and Michelle, one of the limitations was this is a middle of the day meeting, that not everyone has the privilege to do this on the clock. I mean, technically we started over the lunch hour for some, right? But there was this conversation around a very privileged group of people get to sit and have these type of meetings during the day. And because we're a public meeting, right, not everyone is either able to join and serve or to tune in. So we talked about in the past, I think we had this conversation about a year ago. We talked about, do we want to try an evening opportunity? Or now that, I mean, we're all virtual and CATS is recording and it's accessible, you know, after the day, are we okay with staying at Friday at noon?
Does CATS broadcast live? I forget.
Good question. CATS, do you broadcast live?
Like, could somebody plug in if they were watching it live and then log on to plug in if they wanted to come in? Oh, there's Jessica, but she's...
Cats just said, yes, we are live.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah, so
there's
Liz,
a-
like to find the meeting link, I just went to the commission website. So it's open.
Yeah.
If anyone knows to find it
Yeah.
there, it's open to just click there.
Yeah. And it gets published in the paper and somewhere else, I presume, right?
I know for sure that the meeting links, that all of this is stored on the CAT's website. And I know that the meetings are all publicly published, like Michelle said, on the commission website. I cannot confirm or deny that it makes it to the newspaper because I actually don't know.
I think it does. I think it pretty much does.
Okay.
I think most of them do.
Okay.
What
So
about Mim or Rema? Do you have any input as new members? And Nicole,
Yeah.
you too, I'm sorry. Or thoughts about times?
I mean, I think that's a great point Michelle made about middle of the day. It works for me, but I'm able to, be flexible with my schedule. So I think that's a good consideration. And my name is pronounced Rima.
My apologies.
Right.
I think they're good points. It works for me, particularly when it's virtual, because Fridays I have a lot of meetings on Fridays, so it makes it possible for me to make it because I don't have to physically go somewhere. I can just check in. I also could do an evening appointment if that meant that people in the community could come live and provide feedback too.
you bring a really good perspective in, Mim. When we started having these conversations, we were not virtual and we were not even offered an opportunity to be virtual. We were in person. And so perhaps what we explore now is we are willing to stay on Fridays at noon, provided that we can, from this point forward, just always have an option of being able to join virtually, right? So even if we go back to in-person meetings, that's great, but will we still have the option to join virtually? And that's not a decision that I make. That actually comes from the county. So this is something that I can reflect back to the commissioners for feedback and see how they feel about it. Is that the direction that we want to take? Keep our meeting time with respect to that if we go back to in-person, we'll meet in person, but we would like to, for the remainder of the Women's Commission, have a virtual option. That's something we would like to pose for their consideration.
I think it's a nice compromise for the issue.
Okay, Trent?
I also think that's a nice compromise where you would have both. A lot of the discussion that I'm hearing and the other things that I do with the county is that there's a real desire when whatever goes back, whenever, that to have both options because the public has found some convenience with this. And then there's also just the in-person component that we used to do that was, what we did forever. One thing that may complicate all of this is the legislature goes into session in January. There's a lot of discussion across the state about open door, public access, et cetera. And depending on what comes out of the governor's executive order, which is permitting all this and statewide, depending on all that, it may change things. But definitely in this county, there's a lot of discussion about access both ways whenever that happens.
So Trent, in your opinion, do you think this would be helpful as a commission to send a statement of support saying like, hey, we welcome the opportunity to meet in person when safe, but we would like to see the virtual option continue?
Yes, I think so. I think the more people or the more bodies sort of expressing that desire, I think is extremely helpful.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay, Liz brought to the table a really important conversation about MCCSC going virtual again. Liz, I'll hand that over to you.
Yeah, I think that, we represent the women of this county, and I know I hear from women, and including my own family, where they're struggling with all of this. And so I think it would be good for us to talk about that and see. I'm not sure, I don't have any sort of plan or anything to think about doing, but I think maybe at a minimum, we could reach out to the superintendents of both school systems and see what it is that those families may be stressing over, where we might be able to have a voice for them publicly on whatever that might be. I don't even know what we could run into. Jill certainly is in the school system and she may have some things to say about it, but you know, it just seems like that we have a ways to go here. You know, everything in my mind keeps getting pushed back. You know, there's certainly the light at the end of the tunnel. We all realize that. But on the other hand, it's still a long time, even just until March, or if it goes to June. And now they're talking about maybe next fall, things will get back to normal. So it seems to me like the timeline of things having to remain the same is just it's unending, you know, and it's not helping at all. And so I would really like to, I don't know whether we could talk maybe the newspaper and putting out a survey for us. I mean, that would kind of be cool. I don't know what we could do, but I mean, I'm very interested in learning what it is that this voice for women in this area could do to help women and families and their children. So that's where this suggestion came from.
Anyone have any thoughts? I have some thoughts, but I'll hold on to mine for a second. I want to hear from you all. What can we do? Liz brings up a really good point.
I think the overall thing that I'm hearing and feeling from the families is it's a lack of daycare, in-home, some way to help. You know, Trent was saying he's doing e-learning with his kiddo. You know, there are a lot of families that have no one that is home. Even the parents are still working, or it's the older students, the high schoolers that are having to watch the younger ones, and then the parents are getting home. It's throwing everyone on their heads, especially if they don't, you know, if they're not privileged with the component of having a parent at home. And we have a lot of struggling families right now in a lot of different capacities. It's a very ugly onion with lots of layers.
So having a place where the children could have good daycare would help a lot, I'm sure. And then do you see the daycare then actually working with the children in the daycare if they're school age, then to provide e-learning opportunities there? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, Boys and Girls Club has done an amazing job with this, but again, it comes to a matter of you can only have so many kids there. First of all, you have to have the facility. You can only have so many kids there. You have to keep everybody in pods so that you can keep contact tracing, you know, limited. Then it's staffing issues. I mean, part of the reason that RBD is not in session right now is because we have so many staff that are in quarantine or who are dealing with somebody in their family that is in quarantine or positive. So we don't even have the staffing. And so then the next component is, yes, we have empty school buildings sitting there, but we're now, if they can go in for daycare, then why can't they go in for school? So like, there's so many levels of how much can you do? How far can you go? What are our resources that we can really tap into?
I had two thoughts. I'm just trying to think real practically, what are things that we might be able to do? And honestly, there may be other people already doing this, but you know, one of the challenges, and right now my kids are older, so my only distraction is puppies. So if I could put, one thought is if we had an hourly story hour and we read a book and anyone could tune in, an older sibling could get an hour break to work on an assignment if they could put their kid in front of something that wasn't school, but was, educational in terms of maybe a women's commission story hour. And I don't know, we read empowering stories to kids. Again, that's just off the top of my head. It's a thought of something practical, because part of it is even parents who are home needing, hey, I need an hour to get this meeting done or to get this work thing done. So that's one thought. The other thought I had is we could maybe in collaboration with Teachers Warehouse, and again, maybe someone else is doing this, but put together craft kits, something that would entertain a kid, especially as we're coming into the holidays and they don't have assignments because they're going to be off of school, but parents are still maybe working. You know, maybe we could put together craft kits or art kits, activity kits that kids could work on, surprise in the mail package, something to do. And those are just real simple, but
I can jump in and say that I know Teachers Warehouse already has kits put together, but more of not, they have like supply boxes available. So not necessarily a kit. I know as Girl Scouts that that's how we're implementing some of our programming, is putting together, different activities and kits. I will tell you, that's all well and good. And there's lots of places that are, there's Co-Build that jumped in on this at the very beginning. I think anytime that you add one more thing online, it's one more thing online. And right now we have parents, the kids' work is already online, and there's I don't want to take away from your ideas by any means, because I think they're fantastic. I'm just, as the parent sitting there with, I'm privileged. My kids, they're on it. I don't have to micromanage them.
Right.
And I sit there and I think, if my kids were 3 or 4 years younger each, it would be a whole different ball game. Yeah. And these parents are struggling, even if, you're not going to do an hour-long story, because the story does only take, 5 to 10 minutes. And it's one more thing of clicking on it, getting it started for them.
Yeah.
And a lot of their teachers are already implementing a lot of their assignments in that way. So the only thing that I can think of is you really almost need some way, and I don't know what it is because it's not safe.
Right.
Is having someone to basically, I'm coming in to help you with your homework, or maybe it's an online version of, you're going to click in, and if there's a way to share a screen, or I'm going to assist you to get through your work for 2 hours virtually, that might be the piece, but I don't know how to implement that.
Well, maybe it goes back to what Liz says. I think a lot of different parents are going to have a lot of different needs that need, they're going to differ on what would be helpful to them. And maybe Liz's idea is best is, all right, it's not safe to get kids together. And again, pretending that it is not informed. We just know it's, we want to minimize. So I don't know if the answer is to create a space where they can get together. And we all know what Jill just said is everyone's tired of looking at their computer screens. So maybe the best thing is asking parents what they want. And we can't meet everyone's needs, but maybe we can chunk pieces off and try to meet different group of parents' needs in different kinds of ways.
So I am listening, and I've been trying to capture all of this in the notes, so I'm looking away from you guys, but this is really, really, really good discussion. And I agree with you, Michelle. It goes back to what Liz said. Maybe we get a survey out there to see what the needs are, what families think they need. And then perhaps we try a number of different strategies. Yeah. For the first 3 months, we do a reading time. For the second 6 months, we help with homework. Like we don't have to just commit to one thing to meet one type of need, but it is really important, Liz, that we know what the needs are. One thing that I have been thinking about, well, 2 things, and this is partially coming from my own at-home experience with our 7-year-old, right? So I am in Zoom meetings all day, and Dad does not have an educational background, okay? So he is not a trained 2nd grade teacher. So you can imagine how these conversations go at home. So I've been saying this, and I'm not sure if anyone knows whether or not this has been happening, but why haven't we set up training opportunities for parents to know how to be better educators at home? So what does it mean to set up your child's day in a way that is structured similar to their 2nd grade experience? How do we get Dad to be able to have conversations with you about, hey, let's play in the sand. Let's do tactile learning. Hey, let's take a walk or have recess. Let's get away from the computer for a little bit. Here's a different strategy on how I can teach you math. There's a different strategy on how I can teach you sentence forms, right? Like here are different things about gym. Leave it to Dad. Gym will be football drills all day, okay? God love them. God love them, but still, right? And so just thinking about what can we do? Like, are there 1-hour webinars that we can partner with school districts or other educational providers to say, here's training on how to be a teacher from home. Yeah, you have a teacher that's on this electronic device, but we all know that it's different. How do you go from being a parent disciplining to being an educator disciplining, right? That's a big thing, like keeping the opportunities open for students to want to learn. Parents don't know that stuff. They send their kids to school for a reason. It's like, go talk to someone else, right? How do we engage parents on helping second graders still build social capital? If these students go back to school in the 3rd or the 4th grade, how do they still interact with other students rather than just resting on their interaction with adults, right? It's very emotionally taxing. I don't think we've prepared parents to be able to do this. When I think about educators, there are years and years and years of investment into these strategies, learning these theories. They have student teaching for a reason so that you can get in there and practice that. We didn't prepare parents for any of that. Okay, so how do we partner with the districts and educational providers to bring that type of support? That's what I would love to see for our students here.
And I wonder if the Community Foundation and even United Way and others may be interested in this because, for instance, United Way's focus is education, one of their focus. And then Community Foundation, I know, jumped right in to work with the Boys and Girls Clubs and others to provide some of these things that were going on in the spring semester. So, and then now that we have the shutdown, I'm not sure, how they pivoted into that. I mean, we're kind of coming up on the end of the year, but still there's a lot of days and hours left to fill to figure out what we're going to do. And now we're in this mode of where everybody's inside and, they say that the virus transmits more inside where it's drier, which is interesting. I hadn't heard the dryer concept until recently. So that's a whole different level of transmission likelihood that certainly I wasn't thinking of for quite a while. So there's just a lot to think about here. But I think that, I'd be willing to reach out to the newspaper and find out if they'd be willing to put some sort of a survey in. Now, where we'd have that sent to and compiled, I don't know, but maybe we could ask the Center for Survey Research or something at the university if they might be interested in compiling. I mean, there's other entities that might be interested in working on it with us, but certainly I think data is important. We can't, I'm not much on assuming. So to think about having data where you can know that this is what someone has told you is usually a good indicator. And, a lot of times the survey data you get back, you can kind of extrapolate if there's one, there's probably 100 more or something like that. You know what I mean? You get a few people or some people that will speak up, but not everyone will. So you kind of have to go with what you get, but at least it's a beginning point of realizing what the issues may be. So I don't know what other people, I haven't heard from Nicole or Mem or Jessica or others. What are you guys thinking?
I was going to support a lot of what's been said. I think a survey of families is a great idea. I think I would also add surveying the teachers because my husband's a 4th grade teacher in the district. And I know that there's a lot of ideas he has for things he would love to do, but can't do because of the district. So like he would love to be able to, like parents have offered to hold reading hours or parents have offered or have asked for like book clubs that their kids can like meet with a few other kids and do a book club, but he doesn't have the bandwidth. He's online almost from like 9 a.m. until 3:30 p.m. every day. So he just doesn't have the time to do it, but he can't organize it and let other people do it because he's like liable, like the school is liable. So I think, and they can't use Zoom and there's a lot of great technologies that the district has blocked them from. So I think like they can use Teams, right? But it's like, there's some things that we could do in the community that the teachers can't do, that the teachers could provide like a list, like Zoom babysitters. Like if you could get high school students to like volunteer toward like their care watching and they Zoom babysit someone else's kids. So like the parent can do some other meeting. like even like if our meetings were in the evenings and we had Zoom babysitters, so parents could put their kid in a different Zoom meeting with our Zoom babysitters while they watch our meeting, like that kind of a thing. Even just so citizens can attend other county meetings, that's a thing. So Zoom meetings are a thing. Surveying teachers, what would they do if they could do it? And then the childcare, I just keep thinking if there was like those big white tents that they had out during nicer weather that have now been taken down, we could put those back up, like with or without a heater. I mean, we're in Indiana. Like I'm from Michigan and Minnesota, but like this weather is fine. We are outdoor all year round. We have a trampoline. The kids wear their masks. They don't care. There is like they need to, like, we don't want them to breathe germs on each other, but we've been putting them in rooms for months and they're okay. So I think like being able to see each other, even 6 feet away outside, even if they're just sitting in their spot on the ground with their iPad and their friend is 8 feet away with an iPad in a tent outside where it's cold, like I still think they would dig that. So I think a survey could uncover some of these things, because as a parent of a first grader and a fourth grader, when someone asks me what I need, it's really hard for me to articulate it, but having listened to what you guys were all saying and then like taking notes, like I can give you this list of things that might work for other people. And I think on a survey, if there's like similar checkbox items, it might be helpful. Oh wait, I had one more thing. I'm a professor at IU and IU provides 15 hours of care.com credit, which means I'm hiring someone from the community to come into my home and I'm getting not 15 hours, 15 days of provided childcare. And so I'm wondering if the county could do that for some of these families who can't get a spot at Kids Zone, can't get a spot at Boys and Girls Club, but also can't physically watch their kids. Maybe providing some care.com scholarship funds like that would be really, really useful.
Nim, what I like about that care credit opportunity is, as Liz was talking about, like how do we get parents and students that may be assuming parental roles or guardian roles while they're at home, how do we get them to catch a break? Like how can they take a step away? I started thinking about single parent home or stay at home parent networks, right? So it's like you have perhaps a pod of 10 parents or 5 parents that each day you can rotate through the responsibility of having a mini class, right? Like how do we set that up? Perhaps there's a commissioner and the parent, and then there's the pod and the kids, right? Virtual, obviously, but what would that mean if you could just get that break for 45 minutes a day? And perhaps this isn't something that we host, but perhaps we submit or share a list of recommendations on what you can do, right? Consider a stay-at-home parent pod or some sort of network that gets people to kind of share this load together. I have some friends that I watch them do stuff on Facebook for their kids. And I'm like, I'm failing. Like they're doing like Elf on the Shelf stuff and they're setting up like baby like pool, like the little toddler pools in the living room with like beach toys and I'm just over here like, you know what, we're just gonna get through reading today. Part of it is I don't have time to think creatively about this stuff, right? The other part of it is I don't work with kids. Adults are my specialty. So when I see these things that are happening on my Facebook, there are ways for me to then implement them and say like, okay, let me try this. So even if we just become a resource sharing hub for creative ways to engage your students, perhaps that is a webinar talking about how do you talk to them? How do you discipline them? How do you encourage math and science? How do you empower them through reading, right? And then also these kind of fun ways to do science. I know that schools have their own things, right? But sometimes we know that there's just not enough. And when teachers are in person with students, they can tell. They can be like, oh, I see that you struggled writing out 2 + 2 on this paper. You forgot the plus sign here, the minus sign here, right? Like they can tell and they can be hands-on with that student, even if for 2 minutes. That's really hard to do in the virtual format from what we've seen. Jill, I see you're off mute.
Yeah, I think that everything that's been suggested, I mean, I was a classroom teacher, so I'm jumping in on all of this. The the Zoom babysitters and all of that. So one of the things that a couple things that jumped out at me is, number one, there's a difference between the two districts. We found that with girls coding. We are using completely two different platforms. Where MCC is using Teams, we're using Zoom. So we've got a little bit of that we're going to have to keep track of if we decide to move forward with anything. Another one is, if we do, I love the idea of the webinar. Like, I've come across that as a parent and as, previous teacher of, like, I know how to talk to kids. I know, now granted, teaching your own children is different, even if you are a teacher, because there's different expectations set there. But at the same time, there's a better approach to getting your kid to do something. I know that I saw a Facebook plea for help, really, of, oh my gosh, I can't get my kids to do this, whatever. And, I pointed out, I'm like, if you have a kid that really does care about how well they do, then you need to let them start managing their own time. But you can't just say, hey, you need to go do your Zoom work and expect them how to do it. You have to set them up with the parameters of, well, have them help you make that schedule. There's all those pieces that we've learned of, you bring the kid in, you get the ownership, they'll do it. And then you back it up with all the positive reinforcement. So I think a webinar is a great idea. I would not do an hour. I would do 10, 15 minute, we can't hold anybody's attention for anything. So, and it has to be those, hey, I've got 10 minutes while I'm waiting in the car for my click list order, or I have a few minutes here or there. I'm going to bounce over and watch this very quick clip of whatever, or I'm struggling with teaching my child how to do math right now, or telling time, and everybody's using the YouTube, the Google, all of that already. So I think if we were to collect what we can and hold it in a hub, whether that's just a really easy Google website that's fairly easy to build, it could host a lot of ways and suggestions that are put out there, either made by us or collected from other agencies.
I like that. And one thing that I heard you, as you were talking, one thing that popped into my mind is even this cultural context, right? Like how the different ways that we teach and educate in our homes, right? And being able to have some cultural competency to the mode of delivery. And so even thinking about, like, I have again, going back to Facebook, I have a friend who has a biracial child on and often shares about challenges. She's a white woman, she has a biracial child. She often shares about the challenges of her parenting this biracial boy, right? And then also being his teacher, and then also being his disciplinarian. So even thinking about, how are we having cultural conversations around it? We just talked about with Girls Coding Camp, girls lose confidence around grade 4 and stop raising their hand in class, right? How do we have this type of education within the home that says, okay, I need to pay attention. If I do have 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl, am I empowering the girl to still raise her hand or chime in about math and science, right? And so just thinking through, I think there's also a cultural lens that we need to provide resources for as well. But then, Jill, the other thing I was thinking about when you were talking is, I'm not even sure if we received resources on how to set up the best type of working environment for our student. Like right now, we have a desk for him, but he does his e-learning in his bedroom. So sometimes we walk in there and he's crawled in the bed and trying to take a little nap. And I'm like, kid, your teacher is right here, right? So even thinking about, if you have limited access to fiscal resources or physical resources, how do we give you the tools to be able to set up the proper learning environment for your student at home? When I think about high school students and all this stuff that I'm reading in their college applications right now, I'm just like, how do we support parents with, essentially, in the student's mind, adult learners? How do you sit down and have a conversation with a high school student about calculus class when you probably don't even remember the calculus stuff yourself, right? So I think absolutely being a resource hub could be helpful in getting it somewhere that is a living resource, a living document, a living site that we can constantly update and refer people back to. Good stuff. Okay. Any other thoughts about ideas before we start talking about what to do to move this idea forward? Any other brainstorming? Go for it, Trent.
Thank you. I just wanted to say something really quick. One thing that I have really observed in this process, and that Kyla, my wife, and I talk about all the time is, I see these huge conversations on social media and Facebook, but with people about school decisions and rules and policies and philosophies and et cetera. And I'll be the first to say we have massive amounts of privilege in this house. And I'm not sure that we have it that much better, but we've got privilege by just the fact that I can have that conversation and look at that social media post. We have so many families in this community that don't have the time or convenience for any of that. And one thing I think this commission does a good job is thinking about the voices that are not at the table or haven't been at a table or even been told about a table. And I think that when we were talking about surveys, I love the notion of trying, I know it's hard, but trying to get to those voices out there that are they don't have the convenience to debate the school board policy, let alone think about the school board. And that's sort of where some of my frustration kicks in, because so many of us are just in this sphere that is not there. So anyway, I like that notion, and I think there's a lot more of that going on than we don't know half the time.
Yeah. Jessica?
I like the idea of the hub, but I also like the idea of finding out what other partners that we can partner with need help with, like Boys and Girls Club, United Way, Big Brothers, Big Sisters, teachers from the different districts, and finding out how we can use our human capital to expand on their knowledge capital about what the kids need, they know what they can do and what they wish they could do. And so I guess I don't know what our project should be, but I would hate to see our limitation be implementation because we didn't partner with the right people that can help us make it happen, because we don't have the expertise. That's why we're a commission and not a private entity that does this for a living. And I have a really important meeting at 1, another meeting, so I gotta go.
We're gonna miss you. Before you roll off, let's see if there's okay, so I have this real idea that just popped into my mind. We don't have to do this. I'm just putting it out there. One thing I thought about is that, Trent, as you were saying, there just are some families that don't have the privilege of even learning any of this stuff and implementing this stuff at home. But then also someone else was saying that, I think it could have been Jill that was saying, like, some parents are still working. Like, this childcare conversation is a big deal, right? Like, so here's the thing. What if there were city or county spaces that could serve as residential schools? Like, your student could come Monday through Friday, live on site, get in-person instruction. You would have childcare, like they would have access to meals throughout the day. I don't want to say boarding school because I know that kind of freaks people out a little bit, but like if there's this residential experience where students could be in school, but the reason why it would be residential is to reduce the opportunity of transmission. So these students would all be housed and in pods together. It would be strict rules. Like, we wouldn't just have like, oh, the kids just running through the building, right? But they would have like a dorm of sorts. They could have their own individual pod space, but then they would have access to in-person instructors that would take care of like childcare during the day. You would have on-site rec leaders. Like, I'm thinking about the Banneker Community Center. Like, what if that became a residential school experience 5 days out the week? We don't have to unpack that, but just even thinking through something like that, like, how do we address, and not we as in the commission, we can't lift that, right? There just sounds like a whole bunch of laws and stuff that we could not possibly touch. But even thinking about like, how can we encourage our community leaders to think this type of creatively, especially this could be for students who are in at-risk homes, right? How do we get them to safe, sustainable living and educational opportunities that provide some relief for families at home and also help students stay on track to meet Indiana's educational needs and standards, right? Just a thought, something that we can brainstorm and pitch to people later, but it's something that crossed my mind. Any thoughts on that before we roll to our next conversation?
I think it's a great thought exercise, like get out of the box and think about like, because I was like, where could we find a place like that? Like, oh, IU has all these empty buildings that sort of look like that. I mean, even though like, yes, it'd be like a lot of work to put that into place and there's structures that would actively work against that. Like it's a helpful and positive thought exercise. Because I also wanted to mention one other point is that teachers are aware that there's some students who are not showing up. It's like there's some parents and students who aren't learning right now at all. And I don't know how we can address that because like teachers don't want to turn students in and create like a, you know, I'm a criminal justice professor. Like we don't want to funnel kids into like child protective services or, you know, we don't want to get anyone in trouble. But there are some kids and families who aren't learning right now. And so how can we reach them and try to make it work so they can be learning and not falling behind? Well, I think your suggestion would obviously be a solution for some of those families. But what are some other ways we can reach them? Like, I don't know if MCCSD has like a number, like if you really need help that you can call it and not get in trouble. If you're like, hey, I have no other option than to leave my kid at home, my 6-year-old at home when I go to work at Starbucks. I don't know if that's a realistic example, but I don't know if there's a safe place we have where someone could admit that and get help.
Good point.
That is a really good point, actually. And yeah, go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, one of the things that my 2 oldest stepkids have said that they struggle with is not getting the one-on-one time with a teacher, and they're falling behind because of that. And they can't be the only ones that's impacting. And so thinking about other unemployed people in our community who may have the education to be able to perhaps tutor high school and middle school students, if there was a way to like to find a grant or support funding for, because tutoring is expensive, especially one-on-one tutoring, but to maybe facilitate tutors in the community to provide income for people who need it, as well as these one-on-one opportunities for students, you know, to one, give their parents a break, and 2, to help them succeed, because, you know, it's really hard to stay engaged. Yeah.
Building on your
Go ahead.
I just wanted to quickly build on Nicole's idea. It just occurred to me that part of the challenge is that you have to supervise, right? But if you had a gymnasium where one high school teacher volunteered and you had lunch tables out and you had a whole bunch of high school students, they're being supervised, right? Like the high school students are being supervised by the teacher, and then those high school students could have like open tutoring hours where students could hop in and get tutoring. Like it could even just be like one great big Zoom room where they go into breakout rooms. You need a breakout room for algebra, you need a breakout room for calculus, and it's all recorded. So if anything happens, like you're protected from liability. Like that could be a structure. And then you ask high school teachers to volunteer to come in, which I get is labor on teachers and teachers are struggling, but it sort of provides a framework. Or maybe it's not a high school teacher who supervises it. Maybe it's a commissioner or someone from the county.
So now clarify something for me, ma'am. Are these students in person with the teacher or it's entirely virtual?
I think it would all have to be virtual because pandemic, but like Nicole's children could hop onto this like tutoring time, and then they could get put into a breakout room with a in-person tutor. So like the tutors would be in person because someone needs to supervise them. That's my understanding of one of the limitations to having this is that you can't just have anyone with kids interacting online.
Yes.
Right. So if they're physically sitting at lunch tables, if the tutors are physically sitting at lunch tables, socially distanced, they're not like germing each other, and there's someone in authority over them. And these students have the knowledge because they're in the algebra, they're in the calculus, they have the expertise, but they're not super expensive. And criminologists, like, we want them to be busy so they're not out causing trouble. Like, it keeps them on the straight and narrow. I don't know. I'm just brainstorming.
So I wanted to throw in a couple of things that I thought of. Is one, we have a lot of retired teachers that normally do subbing, and right now it is not a good climate for them to be in the buildings. So we have lost a lot of our really valuable, reliable substitutes. So I feel like if there was some way to either make the connection where they felt like they were serving, because they're very noble people and want to serve. I mean, they may even be willing to do it at no cost. And that might be something through Area 10 that we could somewhat set up for the framework. Because then there's an insurance policy piece to that. So I know in the past that if you were with Area 10 and you were over a certain age and you were volunteering, and they would take out this additional insurance for you for free. And then that way, like if you slipped on the ice or whatever, so it would be more in person, but it might be a liability thing too, I don't know. But one, to make those connections with retired subs or retired teachers. But then if there was a way to give them a stipend of some kind, one that's always going to grease that wheel and keep that going. Area 10 is, help me.
Area 10 is on aging, right?
Yes, Area 10 on aging and Rate Center.
Right. They also have the RSVP program, which was the retired senior. Yeah, the RSVP, retired. And I know who runs that.
Who is running that now?
Amy Wardlow, W-A-R-D-L-O-W.
Yes, I've been in communication with her.
Uh-huh.
So then the other piece of it was, I had something else. Oh, I just wanted to comment that 51. That over at RBB, we do kind of have a catch-all system. So like if we have, if teachers are not feeling like they are getting any communication with a family at all, then they are letting the office know. And then we have someone that kind of fits the gap of a social worker. And she's our attendance officer / social worker. She has the biggest heart of gold ever. And she has been working her tail off. I mean, every year, but this year especially. I mean, she's got a longer list now because even though she usually takes care of a certain population, she's taking care of some of the families that are home quarantined where they just can't even get somebody to come pick up a Chromebook or anything. She's making all kinds of errands. She's making sure people have beds. She's making sure they have food. She's making sure that if they're not showing up at school, she's checking in on them. She's picking up kids' medications from, the pharmacies, and that's every year. So this year it's just piled. But I just want to say that RBB does have a built-in, they're not getting in trouble. It's literally a call of concern. So
that's good to hear. And shout out for RBB for doing that, because I know a lot of people won't ask for help if they think that it will put them in the DCS system. And we love our DCS colleagues, right, and the work that they do. But we also know that that is a significant fear. We don't want the investigations. We don't, we don't want the public shame or the sense of guilt, right? So we often don't speak up and say anything. So it's great that you guys have a model that's non-punitive, and perhaps MCCSC has that.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Right.
But that could be something that we learn more about. Okay, I do want to respectfully say that this has been a phenomenal discussion. We are now at 1:09 p.m. and I know we have additional agenda items. So I would like for us to take a few minutes to just talk about, we've done all this great brainstorming. How do we move this forward? What can we do as next steps to learn more and to move this idea of supporting our virtual families more? So what do we think? What do we think we should do? What are some tangible next steps that we can take to continue moving this idea forward?
One suggestion is we could, each of us, send Liz or anyone, somebody here, brainstorm some questions that we might want to consider in a survey. Not that the survey should be, 50 questions long, but if we get a bunch of feedback on different ideas, they can be pared down and framed. I forget if it was Nicole's suggestion, or maybe someone else's, about having, a drop down list or a list of ideas from which to choose, because you don't, sometimes you know what you might benefit from, but you might not be able to come up with on your own. So that's something simple we could all do right off the bat.
Liz, would you like to coordinate this effort about?
I'll take the suggestions.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, I'll collect them.
Okay, and just point of clarification for this call. So Mim and Rima are not appointed commissioners yet, but the way that we've operated in the past, and I think we're okay with operating this way moving forward, is anyone who joins our meetings and they're like, listen, we don't have to be appointed, but we want to do good work, we want to contribute to projects, we allow them to do that and to serve. That's largely how Michelle, putting her on the spot, came into her commissioner role. She was a phenomenal partner with us for Girls Coding. Wow. And then that turned into her just being at the table and having conversations and giving that community opinion. And then next thing you know, boom, bow, pow, she's a commissioner, okay? So I put that invitation out there for people who are watching, who may be like, I would love to help the Women's Commission. We welcome your contributions. You can send us an email that says, hey, we're interested. We're happy to have you. But then also for the people that are on the call, like Mim, who's like, I could probably contribute. Feel free. Like, this commission is not just about those that are appointed. It is about the community that we serve. And so we invite you to jump in. You may not be able to vote in a commission meeting, but that's okay. We'll take into consideration the thoughts and the opinions and the needs of the community, and you're absolutely able to work on projects. So just putting that out there. Okay, so action list. First thing, Liz is gonna coordinate or be the point person for this survey. And
I'll take question ideas for the survey.
Okay, and we're gonna send. When is the deadline for us to send you questions?
Well, when are the kids supposed to go back to school in after the holidays? Does anybody know the date?
RBB is the 4th.
Oh, so it's pretty quick. So
I don't know that I see that happening, but we're supposed to go back on the 4th.
Right.
And even for those who don't go back, there will still be the virtual option, and those families will still need this type of support. Like for us, we're not sending ours back because we know that he gets sick really easily. So we have to figure out like what we can do at home, right? So I know there are going to be families that when it does open up, they're still not going to send back. I think this will still be valuable.
So what about, I think, a few days for us to think about it is enough time to get me survey questions. So how about next Tuesday? You get them to me by the end of the day next Tuesday.
The 15th?
Is that the 15th? Yeah.
Yep.
Is this survey just for parents, or are we going to do a survey for teachers?
We decide. Maybe we'll have one of each, right? So if you have survey questions you can think of for parents and or teachers, or both. So how about 3 different categories? Parents, teachers, and both. So because some may apply to both, some may apply just to parents or teachers.
I think we could do one general survey, but have an option that allows you to indicate if you're responding as a teacher or a parent or both. And that way, when we're sorting through the data, we can see, well, our teachers are saying this, our parents are saying this, those who have dual roles. I'm gonna put Mim on the spot. She does a lot of good work with building out surveys and even like connecting them and like having the logic based on how you progress through the survey. So I would feel comfortable even if we could tap into Mim's expertise about what makes sense for building the survey. I think just one would be good so that there's one link that we share and we're not overwhelmed with trying to manage multiple links in multiple places.
I think there might be, so Jess Calarco is a researcher in sociology at IU, and she recently put together a survey. So she does research on this type of stuff, like parenting and the pandemic, and she's interviewed people in Bloomington So it's possible she has a survey that could be adapted and used.
Oh, wow.
But and so I can reach out to her and ask. I'm happy to do that, and then connect.
And the
with
other
you, Liz.
thought I have, if she's done some research in that area, you know, what kind of findings might she be willing to share that she's already collected that will inform what we do?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Exactly.
And I think so. One of the hurdles, though, is getting the district to help us distribute the survey and to get the district to support the survey.
Yeah.
Because that's how we're going to reach families and teachers.
Well, you know what? We could use the union for that too. There's a union at both schools, and I certainly can make those connections.
Okay, because I think that's the bigger hurdle than that, how to make the survey, because like IU has free access to Qualtrics. So for this type of thing, like we could use Qualtrics. That's how Jess Clarko is distributing the one to kind of ask professors and caregivers on campus how we're being impacted by the pandemic. So I'm happy. Actually, I can just connect Jess with you, Liz, and see if she has survey items or survey or findings.
Perfect.
That would be helpful.
I
I
appreciate
don't
that.
see
That's
there being
wonderful.
an issue getting RBB to do it.
Okay.
I also don't want to lose the idea of having the link available in the paper.
Oh yeah.
Just distributed to the schools.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it could be on Facebook. So if you can get the right people to share it on Facebook, it can go around quickly.
We could send it out to a lot of places. I mean, there's certainly a nonprofit alliance which has a whole bunch of, 700 to 1,000. There's just a whole bunch of places we could get it out in the community. The library could take it. I mean, it's just a whole bunch of places, right?
Yeah, and that would probably be the easiest way is if we were to go through the library, then that makes it almost an automatic, easy push through the schools.
Yep.
Yep. And I think also too, giving the community foundation an opportunity to be a part of this discussion.
Yes.
I know that they have really done a good job of exploring like impact investing and like what that actually means for a community. So even saying like, hey, we know that you guys have community partners and strategic partners that you work with. Will you distribute this survey so that we can figure out how we can meet the needs? And perhaps they could be a good strategic partner for this. So it sounds like we're going to connect with the library, the community foundation. Mim is going to make an ask of Jess, is it Clarko? Okay. And then we're still going to send question ideas to Liz though, so that as all of these pieces come together, we are having, like we have a good working list of questions.
Yeah, I'll collect them.
One last thing I would mention is if the commission's going to do a survey, then we should throw in a question related specifically to the commission, something related to, we've talked a lot historically about gathering data about the needs of women in the community. So we should not lose an opportunity to ask something that's specific about, I don't know, perhaps ways the commission can serve or, I haven't fully formulated that thought, but let's not lose this opportunity to throw in a question that relates to how we can serve.
Absolutely.
Outside of this initiative.
Excellent.
Nicole, would BCSW be interested in being a formal partner with us on this?
Yes. I don't see why not. I have to ask them, but I'm interested in helping.
Okay, great.
But I will take it to them for our next meeting. But that doesn't happen until January. So it sounds like that will happen after the target window.
Well, it sounds like right now we're just brainstorming because we'll have to come back to the table for our official January meeting as well. So just brainstorming. COVID has proven to be, and I think will continue to be, a long-term problem.
Yeah.
So I think this is still going to be very timely. So that's wonderful, Nicole. Yeah. Okay, so our steps forward. We're going to share ideas with Liz about questions to include on the survey. We're going to try to do that by end of business on December 15th. We're going to reach out to Jess Clarko and see if she would be interested in giving us more insight onto the type of surveys that have already been done around this type of issue, and then also consulting with her to say what should we include on the survey that goes out. We're going to push this ideally to the newspaper. We do want that type of visibility, but then we're also going to look at working with district leadership, the community foundation, the public library, and of course, BCSW. I think those are good tangible items for us as we head into holiday season, okay? And I think this is good enough legwork for our January meeting. Go ahead, Liz.
I was just going to say, I also wonder about the School of Education at IU. Is that where your person comes from, Mim, or does she come from somewhere else at IU?
She comes from sociology, but I know that IU is doing some like online tutoring and they've tried to respond. The School of Education has. Yeah, I'm not as plugged into that though.
Okay, all right.
Because I know that we've been advertising that through our school district newsletter.
Okay.
The free tutoring from IU.
Okay. But you haven't seen anything about IU actually doing a survey of
No.
teachers or, okay, thank you. All right.
Okay, let's keep rolling because we got 9 strong minutes left. Okay, we're gonna get through this agenda. So if you've paid any type of attention to the newspaper or the news or social media, you have heard about what happened to our neighbors that are houseless here, that were staying in Seminary Park. I want to open up the floor right now for any thoughts or just any thoughts about the situation in general.
Did anybody else attend the Parks Board meeting? I did. Yeah, well, virtually, but there were nearly 250 people that attended. Many spoke, and I didn't see anybody speak in favor of, closing it down. But the problem is that the existing rules and regulations already provided for that for overnight closure. So they went in, they gave them an hour's notice, as I understand, and took out the tents then right after the end of that hour and provided services. So it wasn't just like they were just coming in and shutting it off and then not providing a plan B. But, I don't remember how long it was in effect. First of all, I don't remember how long the tents were up. It was up a good long while, as I understand, right? So, all of a sudden it became a crisis, it seems. And then, then it stopped. So, I just am baffled as to why it became a crisis. It seemed like almost instantly. And so.
It felt like retaliation to the meeting.
Yeah.
That's the optics around it right now.
Yeah. So I think it wasn't a good timing situation either for the recipients that got displaced or for the whole play out of the meeting and what happened the next night then after that, or that night after that. So I think it's a huge public perception problem, both for the people living there that were living in the tents as well as those who implemented the action. And it didn't fix anything. It didn't fix anything. If we're talking about solutions to problems, this didn't fix anything.
Any other thoughts?
I'm trying to read about it online because I had seen the headlines, but I hadn't read a whole bunch. So they were only given an hour notice that was going to be the day. Like they didn't have any.
They knew that they were having the. Go ahead.
Allegedly, for about 2 weeks ahead of this, there were outreach workers from different shelters that were going into Seminary Park and sharing like, this could be like what's going to happen. Here are some of your resources. That's what some community buzz and some community leaders are saying. I'm not entirely sure of that. I haven't seen that documented as part of the mayor's press release or any other leadership's release. So I'm not entirely sure that that's what was happening.
Yeah. This is a super naive comment perhaps, but or question maybe, why couldn't they have come in and said that by 8 a.m. you need to go somewhere else? Because just packing up all your stuff in an hour, and this is the naive comment, I am an avid camper and hiker and I have just what I need for that weekend. And it's hard for me to pack up just just what I brought the night before and unpacked. It's hard to pack that all up again in an hour, but to pack everything that's important to me in less than ideal, make sure, I don't know. That is really upsetting to me that it was in the dark of night, 1 hour. It's really upsetting to me that the police decided to make that decision and in the very least.
Well, the mayor's office made the decision.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the mayor's office then. Yeah. That's upsetting to me that that's how they handled that.
Mhm.
Yeah, like how about at 8 o'clock in the morning after a good night's sleep?
Mhm.
Yeah, and they say,
Not a good night. Let's
Yeah.
say that a familiar night's sleep.
but announcing at 8 a.m. that you have until 8 p.m. is very different than you have 1 hour, it's cold, it's dark, you're tired.
Yeah.
Even if you've been warned for 2 weeks, like that doesn't matter. The school district warned us for like a month that kids were going to come home. It doesn't matter until they say your kids have to come home tomorrow. Like you don't
Yeah.
hire a sitter until that happens.
Right.
Go ahead, Trent.
I'm not sure on all the details related to how this happened, what went down. I try not to be critical of what other units have done, other than because I don't know the details. But I will say this: none of that appeared to be very ideal, and I am constantly worried about the amassing number of people we have. Not just Seminary Square is kind of very visible, but that's just one drop in that bucket of folks that we have that are houseless. I mean, there is literally on the south side of town, there is a in the woods armada of tents that are out there. And I think my overall concern is we have a massive housing issue that is not moving anywhere quick towards solvency or being fixed. And the flip side to that, multiple issues that feed into that we could do a thesis on. I am, from a humanitarian aspect, I do not like removing people from anywhere. I didn't like it when it happened on the courthouse lawn. But I will say this, I am extremely concerned about people outside in the weather as it becomes chaos. That can't be a plan for a community that we're going to have people camping out through a winter. And so all this to say, I think there's massive amounts of things that we have to do on housing, on shelter. And I won't pretend to have any of those answers, but it sounds like these are just going to continue to be symptoms of something that is just huge. And Seminary Square is just kind of so visible.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's not visible. I mean, there's tons of tent encampments all over this community.
Yeah.
And that was my concern. And that's why I felt in some ways it was retaliatory to the type of community response that was available, that was present in that Tuesday meeting, which I did not attend. I'll be the first to admit, I was completely ignorant to the fact that this was even a major concern in our community and that this was like a potential vote that was going to happen. I didn't even know that was going to happen on Tuesday. And so for me, I think there were some things, again, that were done proactively, perhaps off of like this idea, like this could be a potential. I will say this, there's a policy that states you cannot be in an encampment from, I think it's 11 p.m. to 5 a.m.
That's right.
That's why the timing happened. That's why the
1 hour
happened at around 11. I understand that. I'm a firm believer that if you have a policy or a law in place, like you are supposed to follow that. I do believe in reviewing these things based on the community that you're serving and the needs that are changing, right? Like we're in a community where housing is not affordable and not accessible. Like that's just the reality. So to have a policy like that, when we know that we have a significant houseless population, I think there should have been more care around reviewing that. So I do understand, though, at this time, they're saying we were enforcing and following the policy. What is not clear to me is if the policy says that you cannot be in an encampment, there are a couple of things that are not clear to me. One, this behavior is against the CDC recommendation to disrupt encampments during this time, right? It gets completely opposite of what the CDC is recommending. And there was a statement that was issued that is a little bit confusing to me for the mayor's office to say, well, this technically isn't an encampment. But you see the video from the Bloomingtonian where you are literally waking people up and telling them that they have to leave. So the article or the statement that is released from the mayor's office is one that tries to paint this picture of like, this is like a social gathering place. They're not actually using this place to sleep. They're just using this place to hang out. But that's not true. Like we see you like coming to their tents and like telling them to wake up and leave. So that is a little bit alarming to me. I don't understand why leadership is painting this picture that we all as community members know to be true. We see people sleeping in Seminary Park. We see people sleeping all over this place in tents, or some people don't even have tents. So that's one thing that's confusing to me. The other thing is, if the policy says you cannot be out here from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., okay, we'll follow the policy. But the same way that you came and took their stuff, why do you bring their stuff back to them? So now you're adding an additional barrier that says if you want to reclaim your belongings, which we know are limited anyway to people, you now have to go to the park's operations building. So how are we getting there? How are we getting there? How are we having a vehicle that's either large enough to bring multiple people? Because we know that the houseless community, they really do function as a network and a community and support to each other. So are we having to do multiple trips to try to get our stuff? What if we rely on public transportation? How are we getting all of our stuff onto a bus? Like that type of, I'm coming to take your property, but I'm not returning it to you. That to me seems like malpractice on our leadership's behalf. So I'm particularly concerned about why there wasn't a different set of conversations that could lead to better outcomes for the houseless people. Even if you're saying like they can't stay in Seminary Park from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. Okay, but then why aren't you returning their belongings? I don't walk into anyone else's house and say, hey, I'm gonna take this, and if you want it back, you come and get it. I don't do that. I don't do that. If I borrow your something, or if I take your something, it is my responsibility to return it to you. So this to me is why it feels like an attack on poverty. It feels like a war on poverty actually being manifested in 2020 right here in Bloomington. Trent, you bring up another really good point. Did they do this all over? Like every single encampment had their stuff confiscated? If not, did you only do that for Seminary Park because people complain about the optics of that place? I don't feel comfortable going to that Kroger. I don't like going to that rally or
the post office. There's been complaints about people going to the post office.
Or the post office. And my final point about it, because I'm really worked up about this, because I at one point when I was a child, I was homeless. I lived in shelters that were dangerous to our family. I was the child of a family who was like, we're not going back to that shelter, so we'd rather sleep in and under our cars. Okay, so I really care largely about how we treat houseless people. But the other thing that is just not, that is a little bit confusing to me is this idea of them publishing data around the number of needles that were found within the tent. It just feels like you're really trying to paint a criminalizing perspective on this population particularly. And I'm not sure why you would do that when they're already traumatized by you taking their stuff. And now you put in this article that, by the way, we recovered X amount of needles. There's a really good statement.
They made the comparison about how many it was last year versus
last year to this year.
Nearly 10 times difference. And I get that's an issue, but I don't understand the point of that either.
But the IRA released a really good statement that said, hey, yes, you guys are saying this, but some of this is half truths, because when you guys report numbers, you don't only report those non-sterile syringe numbers. So if you have a box of sterile 100 count needles, you're reporting that as the number of needles that you found. You're giving public misconception that there were thousands of non-sterile used needles, and that may not be the case. And so the IRA was very transparent about how they've caught our leadership making those type of reports before. So all in all, I wanted to bring this up because in the video, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch the Bloomingtonian video, but there is a pregnant woman that we watch in this video get misplaced from her encampment. And when I think about women in this community, I cannot, in good faith, not talk about our houseless women as well. So I don't know if there's something that we can do to show solidarity or support, which may be a good segue into MIM's MoCo cocoa event, right? To give us a little bit of a boost of energy. But I do want us to think very critically about what's our statement here, right? We cannot be a commission that is dedicated to serving people and meeting needs and not have a clear stance on this. So I would actually like for us to release an official statement as a commission about where we stand on this. What are the questions that we have for our leadership, and even asking like, how can we be a part of this solution? What is it that our houseless neighbors need from us in this time? What are your guys' thoughts on this?
I just want to just like share a little bit of information that in Indianapolis, they have a whole police section that helps people without homes, and like they go visit them and they check on them to make sure they don't have hypothermia. And if they do, they bring them resources, like they leave them in their spots and make sure that they are safe. And so this occurrence, I think anytime we hear someone in our government currently say that this was in any way to benefit these people, we need to stop them and ask them specifically how. Because this is not helping the people in the park. This might be helping people who don't like the eyesore, but that's who you're helping. You're helping the people who don't like the eyesore. This isn't best crime practice. This isn't best economic practice. It's not good humanitarian practice. And if this had happened at 3 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 a.m., I would have been out there protesting this. I would have been helping people pack up their tents, which can cost hundreds of dollars. I would have, this is bad and ugly and shameful. I don't know how to fix the harm that they've created, but there are a billion different ways they could have done this. And there are a lot of resources here in Indianapolis that they could have called on, that the mayor could have, or the police could have called on. And I'm happy to help write that letter. This is really shameful and harmful.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Anyone else want to share feedback?
I'm no expert here, but I mean, I agree. I would be in full support of a statement. I don't have enough content knowledge to help draft it, but I'm certainly happy to look at a draft and provide feedback from that standpoint. But I would support a statement coming out from our commission.
Jill, Nicole, or Trent, any thoughts?
I have to say that this is really kind of the first time hearing about it because I've been in my own bubble for quite some time. So from what I'm hearing from all of you, I'm in full support. I do feel like I can't say too much more because I haven't read the articles or seen the video yet, but I'm sure if it's exactly what you say it is, which I believe, I'm in support of the letter.
Sure.
Well, just one more thing I want to say, and part of the thing for me is the fact that we know that housing first models work, right? We know that people who are houseless we know that when we give them homes, we know that they're much more successful, 80% or higher, much more successful in being able to have a life for themselves on the other side of being in that new housing opportunity. Without that, that the recovery and all those models just don't seem to work as well, right? They need a place to be, which is the house. So the fact that, I mean, I would support something in some statement that says, let's work on as a community in bringing to fruition more housing first models here so that we don't have to, so that they don't have to face this in the future, right? And we know that we've been able to be successful in helping them as much as we can, but to do nothing, I think, is irresponsible.
I think also too, I just would challenge people to think about the concept of a house and a home, because a lot of people do live in cars year round and they live in tents in places like Seattle. And what cities can do is provide safety. So they can provide a police officer to look over that designated area where people sleep in tents. And some people do it because they have a sex offense conviction on their record and they can't live in certain places. And so I would just encourage us to, Bloomington has been struggling with creating affordable housing, and they're trying to build apartment buildings and fancy things, but really they could just like designate a field where they have officers, make sure it's safe so people can't beat each other up and steal stuff from each other. And if the community cares about, if the community views Seminary Park as a safety risk, that helps mitigate risks, right? You have an officer there immediately who can provide CPR, who can call reinforcements if that's needed. Just because someone's living in a tent or in their car doesn't mean that they need a different place to live or that they're a threat to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was going to say, Mem. Even when we talk about policing, we have to be careful about hyper policing populations that we think are more violent. So to me, I think that there should be the same type of access that we have to safety when we're in a home should be the same type of access that this community should have when they're houseless, right? I don't think it needs to be hyper policing in any way, especially when we see that this community is weaponized and criminalized in so many different ways, right? So I do think that there should be a designated area of supervision, maybe not necessarily protecting houseless people from each other, but protecting non-houseless people, or like protecting houseless people from non-houseless people, and like the perception of what is happening in this community, and just being able to go into this field and like take stuff. Like, I mean, if the police can model that we can just walk into your community and do what we want to you, I'm nervous about what that can mean for wider community perception. So I'm absolutely in favor of direct support services, not necessarily in a way that we over police. But then also, I think you bring up a really good point about, let's not assume that people who are living in tents don't want to live in tents.
Yes.
We don't complain about people when you just get up in your car and just drive across the nation just to explore for 6 months or 9 months, right? And you live out of your car and we don't complain about that. When we're talking about my profession, we're on the road sometimes 4 or 5 months out the year. No one makes assumptions about me living out of my suitcase. Now, granted, I'm in a hotel, but like that's not technically a home or house, right? So I want people in our community to think about some people that are living in these houseless communities or these encampments. That is their preference. That is intentional. That is where they have found community. They have found that perhaps their dollar goes further than having to pay a landlord and a light bill and a water bill and a gas bill, and having our public transportation system in Bloomington is not absolutely perfect, right? So again, some of these people that are in this environment choose to be in this environment, and we should not demonize them for that choice. So it sounds like we're all in favor of, well, I didn't say all because I didn't hear from Nicole and Trent.
Let me offer this comment. I think this commission does a great job at voicing the concerns that it has, picking the topics and issues that it wants to do. And I think it should definitely do that on this issue. Here's my own personal where this comes in. I think that we have a lot of public officials in this community and a long time with that, where we, including myself, have not done enough. And clearly for the houseless, there is a million more things that we need to do. And I am part of that. While I would not have done any of this the way that this has been done, I do have a little bit of issues on my own part throwing stones at the city's house when I think the county's probably got a million more things that we need to do. That said, I think that this commission, should it want to speak, should speak. And I think that's what keeps public officials like myself on our toes and hearing from folks. So I hope that all makes sense. But, there's not a day that I don't drive past that park and other places, like I mentioned before, and think we are not doing things right. But that's a city, county, and other in Indiana problem that we definitely have.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you for that contribution.
Yeah, I personally think it's a state issue in many ways, because oftentimes we hear complaints about how other counties or areas ship whoever it is they have here to be in that sort of situation or end up in that sort of situation. And if it's a state issue, there ought to be some state resources in the skin of the game here too, I think. So I think it's not
Right.
just a city, county, or whatever issue. I think it includes states and maybe a US issue. You know, there's all kinds of different levels that could have some skin in the game in this and really make something beneficial for so many people if we came together to put together some programs and services, not just programs and services, physical spaces for them to be.
Although
That's
usually
really
the
good.
places that have the most services are where you have the highest homeless pop or people without homes. So like it actually is probably a really good sign that the city and the county are doing things because people want to live here. That's the catch-22 of it.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, I see that you have to roll off for 2 o'clock, and we do need to take a vote on whether or not we're going to make a formal statement as a commission. And again, this doesn't have to be a statement that bashes any elected official or that demonizes or weaponizes against any particular entity. What I'm asking you guys to do is to take a stance on what we believe needs to happen to support our houseless neighbors, right? And to actually, I think in many ways say we've acknowledged that this isn't how we would have done things. This is not the impact that we would have wanted to leave on a community. We do not want to re-traumatize the traumatized, as was said in one of the articles, but we do acknowledge that something needs to be done. We're standing in solidarity with this population, and here are questions that we have, like Trent said, that we can pose to hold our leaders accountable. So that's what the letter is. Obviously, that's not the official language. So what the vote will be, what I would like to entertain a vote for is voting in favor of crafting some sort of statement on behalf of the Women's Commission that directly speaks to the crisis that our houseless neighbors are experiencing.
Yeah, it's not just Seminary Park. This would be in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor of, hold on, let me take
Are we going to define who's going to do it? Did Mim offer to put something together? I forget.
So it has to come, I'm asking that this come from the commission. So Mim is not a commissioner yet. She's just a visitor.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
So I would be happy to take the lead on this one.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I have a motion from Liz and a second from Jill. All in favor, signify by aye or a raised hand, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Looks like it was unanimous. Okay, well, I will get to working on this early next week and send it all to you for draft and approval. We are at 150.
Yep.
We do not, I want to hear from you guys. Do we want to keep rolling? I know some people have commitments. Our meetings usually wrap up around 1:30. There are 2 additional points on the agenda. Do we want to table those?
Is something timely that needs action before we get back together?
No.
Okay. Well, however they got there, does someone care if we just postpone it until next month?
Table those to January?
Well, as long as however they got on the agenda, if that person or persons doesn't care that we
Never mind. You can table it. Yep.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and adjourn today's meeting at 1:49 p.m. Thank you all and happy New Year.
Have a good holiday.
Take care.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.